just now. What's up, everyone? We're back. Me here with Alki. How you doing, Alki?
I'm good, man. It's been a while. How are you doing?
Good, good. Yeah, I mean, it's the first pod for us, obviously. The Australians opened us up last week with the first pod of the season, but it's the first one for us. It's been like I think 2 months since we were on. Late May. I don't think we did anything since the Cup final. So
Yeah.
it's been a long time. But the season has started, So late July, we're back into it. I was thinking, obviously we had our first game on Thursday, and uh the European commitments have started, but not the league commitments, obviously. And today, when we're recording this, it's Sunday, so I was kind of yearning for a game today, like because we already started the season. I was like, I would like for there to be a game today because if it was deeper into the season, yeah, we would have a game on Sunday in the league. Because it feels like a long time to wait one whole week for the next game. Like I'm already itching for it.
I
But
know.
that's kind of what we're here to talk about. Like, in order to have 2 games a week, you got to be in Europe. That's basically how it goes. And in order to get into Europe, you have to get through the qualifiers. So that's what the subject matter is today. Um, so yeah, we'll start with a game on Thursday. It was the first official game of the season, second Europa League qualifying round against Botev Plovdiv. 2-1. They came to Athens, Oaka. Fairly empty Oaka. During the game, I said there was maybe like 15 to 20,000. Other people were saying different numbers. I think in the end, it was about 11,500 I saw, which, you know, all things considered, you could look at it either way. A lot of people are like, look at what we had against Braga. It was a full stadium at Oaka a year ago, and now it's this. It's not the same. One is Champions League playoff round qualifying. This is Europa League second qualifying round. You know, there's a difference in time too. We're in late July now. That game was in late August. And obviously the quality of opponent is way different. That was Braga, and this is Botif. No disrespect to them, but it is a difference in opponent. So yeah, did we have 65,000 then and 11,000 now? Yeah, but it's kind of comparing apples and oranges at this stage, in my opinion. So anyway, that's just what the stadium looked like. But we'll get into the key moments. So we opened the score very quickly with Yeremayev in the 8th minute. It was a long ball over the top from Mladenovic. Actually, was credited with the assist. I didn't realize that in the moment. But it was a long ball over the top. It bounced once, and Yeremayev did a good job. He just like kind of slipped behind his opponent, the defender, and was clear on goal, clear-ish on goal. And at that point, all he had to do was really just get it on target, and it was probably going in unless it was right at the keeper, which is kind of exactly what happened. He didn't get a lot on the shot, but he did well because, if you rewatch it, he was actually his body position and the ball was taking him away from goal. So he kind of had to, do a whatever 90-degree turn towards the goal. So he did really well, and obviously he keeps that goal to minute ratio uh,
Yeah.
up there.
Wasn't
So that was
Maldanovic got credited for it? I thought it was
that's what
Bart
it
that got it.
that's what
I'm
it
pretty
says
sure
here.
it
I
was
mean,
Bart. Bart got it
this
from the middle. I'm almost positive. Well, I mean, ESPN doesn't have the stats. FotMob has Bart. SofaScore has Maldanovic. So I don't know. Somebody got it.
I I would take your word on it honestly because the ball didn't come from the left side. The ball came through the middle, even more towards the right side of our of
Yeah.
our
I
defense.
mean,
So
regardless, but yeah.
it wouldn't
I
make
just
much sense for it to be Mladenovic.
it didn't look like a ball Mladenovic could hit like that too, because that
If it was
was
Mladenovic, it
pretty
would
on
have
the
gone.
money.
Yeah, it would have gone out the touchline. So anyway, that was the first big kind of moment in the game. Then we threatened again the 12th minute. There was a nice play down the right side. Via made a nice through ball to it was Mancini who was running after it. He took it to the right side of the box and then really well crossed it into the box right where Yeremayev was, but he couldn't get it down and he kind of skied it over the bar. But it was a really nice run of play starting from the back all the way to the center forward Yeremayev. Everything executed perfectly, passing accuracy, speed, and just the finish was what let us down there. That was in the 12th minute. And then there was a bunch of other chances in the half until we got to the 44th minute, which was the second goal, courtesy of Bacaseta's penalty. And that was created thanks to Juricic, who won the penalty. He, kind of went head first into the box, dribbling. He was kind of falling onto like three Botev defenders. If you watch it again, he kind of really had nowhere to go. So I think he made the best out of that situation with the penalty, because I do think if he kept going straight, he was just going to run into a wall and they would have taken the ball cleanly from him. But he made the most out of it. He kind of just dinked the ball a little bit smartly. So he gave away possession, and obviously the defender came in late, cut him off, clear penalty. No debate about that. And Bacaseta just hit a rocket into the back of the net, in kind of true Bacaseta's fashion. So we went into the half leading 2-0, which was excellent, kind of the best case scenario, scoring right before the half. At that point, I thought it was going to be done and dusted. I didn't really see any signs of them coming back. But they did get back into the game. They scored in the 71st minute from a really unfortunate turn of events. Villena plays the ball back to Arau, who actually, it was Villena's fault. The ball was just completely short. It was not Arau's fault at all. Villena just pulled up short on the pass. The two Botev players were lurking, and all they had to do was do like a sweaty goal, and it was basically curtains for Drago. But again, can't really blame him there. It was the defense was completely exposed from the moment that the back pass was short. And then we had a scare in the 82nd minute, I believe it was, where we had another almost not almost identical, but same idea as the goal we conceded 10 minutes earlier, where there's a pass back right in the middle of the pitch, right at the circle, and the pass itself wasn't good. I think it was a Rao passing back to the defensive line. It was again a short, kind of half-hearted pass, but then the two center backs, Yedvay and Bart, they looked at each other. No one committed to it, and their striker, their pacey striker, pounced on it. He took it, and there was no catching up to him afterwards. Drago comes out. I actually think he played it really well. Originally, it got called a penalty for contact inside the box. Drago to their striker. On review, after a VAR check from the ref, he deemed that it was not a pen. I believe that was the right call. If you watch the replay, which they showed it many times, Drago actually pulls his arms back, which is very very aware of him. He knows he's exposed. He knows that he saw that the striker was making a move to the right, kind of to avoid him, and he pulls his arms back. Um, Therefore, there was no contact. And in fact, upon replay, the striker was already falling before the minimal contact occurred anyway.
Right,
So
right.
the minimal contact, the pulling of the hands back, and the falling already is more than enough to overturn that penalty, which he rightfully so did, which was huge because that was in the 82nd minute. And I don't want to say we weren't going to come back from that, but that would have felt like a real gut punch. Even conceding that goal earlier was a big gut punch because we were kind of controlling the game, and then for them to get that at more or less the death would have really felt pretty horrible. Apart from losing the win late in the game, so that was kind of the broad strokes of the game. So yeah, we're gonna dive into it. Alki, what did you see from the game? What did you like? What did you dislike?
Um, I mean, let's start with the first half. Probably couldn't have asked for a better start to campaign outside of, I'd say, like Yeremayev not putting away a couple more chances. Realistically, the first half we could have been up 3 or 4-0. But I mean, it's like, beggars can't be choosers at that point. Um, but really, yeah, it was a very reassuring, good first half, especially with the shit show of a summer with all these rumors with who we're signing, who's the coach going to be, all that just excitement and torture at the same time. But, we ended up with Alonso and there are a lot of questions. His resume is so-so. but from what I saw in the first half, like they played great. In all honesty, obviously there's still some gaps that need to be filled. We still have some of the similar and same flaws I think that we had over the last 2 or 3 seasons, really. Um, but yeah, the first half was great. Everyone played great. Mancini, I think, and Vaianides created a lot of good chances. Like I said, couldn't put away all of them. Jurisic, probably those three for me. Anyone you can give him man of the match, and I don't think you'd get any argument from anyone. And then second half, we just completely 180-degree turn. We just flopped, honestly. It was really concerning. Um, we could have ended up losing the game or ending in a draw, if it wasn't for that correctly overturned call, which I was going to ask. I don't believe in these qualifiers in previous seasons that they had VAR, did they?
I think in the second qualifying round for conference, they don't have VAR, but
Gotcha.
because it's Europa, they have VAR. Because I remember if you go back to 2 years ago when we played Slavia Prague, that was third Conference League round qualifying, and there was no VAR in there because that was the game that Palacios got the red, which was ridiculous, a ridiculous call.
Yeah.
There was another red in that game, I think, and maybe a questionable goal or something. But anyway, my point is that I do remember in that game there was no VAR. That was third conference qualifying round. But I think because this is Europa, there
Yeah,
is
that
VAR,
might be
and
what it is. I think you're right, conference. But I mean, I guess in a nutshell, it's good to see that we get it because for moments like that, like you said, from 2 seasons ago, even I believe last year in the beginning, we had a couple questionable stuff and they just either didn't have it or wasn't available for whatever reason.
I think
But
in maybe when we played Dnipro last year, maybe there wasn't
that's what
VAR.
I was thinking. I think it was the Dnipro game where we didn't have any.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
either way, it's good to see it does serve its purpose, like you mentioned. I mean, you can see there was contact from Dragowski, but at the end it was contact just because the guy was already falling into him. There's like no way he could have avoided it.
right.
Um, but yeah, back to just we just can't see out games when we've got the lead, similar to what we had last season under both Jovanovic, Terim, and now Alonso just kind of crumbling and folding in the second half, trying to see out games. And it was real evident in this first match. Of course, maybe that can be turned around, but we essentially have the same squad. Um, we have a few new signings that we'll get to, but um, in a sense, having the same squad with that same mentality, whatever it is you want to call it, it's just a little concerning and just something we are going to have to deal with. It seems like going into this season as well. So, credit to them, they got the win, but there's still it was kind of like a 50-50 game, like a lot of good and a lot of bad. I think the only other thing I can mention is that we really didn't have any good impact or quality off the bench, which is surprising. I mean, we talked about it throughout the week after the game within the group and just, no impact subs, which is also, concerning because it's like, you can't have your guys playing out there 80, 90 minutes a game and striker position, Fotis is out. Yeremiev did get the goal, but he also had a lot of loaded chances. And it's like, we make fun of Sporar or dislike, his output. And it looked like, at least in the first game, we got the same from Yeremiev. So it's like, that's another position. The defense is another big question mark. We got a new center back, which we'll get to, but yeah, that and filling the gaps in the midfield, the wing. I mean, everywhere just needs a good backup, if not a better starter. And so that's the concerning thing, just especially, long season ahead, qualifying for Europe, like you're gonna need to be able to rotate and after that game, it doesn't look like we'll be able to, honestly. And that's what I'm concerned about most.
Yeah, and obviously we are waiting for transfers. It's starting to happen now, and like you said, we'll get into it. I want to go back to what you said about, it was kind of a tale of two halves thing. We were strong in the first half, and then it trailed off in the second half, which is kind of the pattern that's been happening even in the last couple of preseason friendlies. I think the last two that were against AEK Larnaca and Netanya from Israel. Um, it was more or less the same thing. Like we were strong in the first half. I think most of our chances came in the first halves in those games, and then the second halves were lower tempo. There's a lot to consider here. Like it is still early in the season. I don't not looking for excuses, but it's still early in the season, so the fitness is not there. It's understandable that the players are gonna have more to give in the first half rather than the second half. Obviously, that's something that needs to get sorted quickly because the schedule is going to get more demanding very soon, especially in the third Europa League qualifying round if we get there, hopefully, which we'll also touch upon. And then, of course, once we have 2 games a week, then forget about it. And then that starts getting into the depth, like you're talking about. Like you're going to have to rotate uh, and be able to give it your all, both in midweek and on the weekend. Um, also Alonso's uh game plan is very demanding. Like we've talked for these month and a half basically that he's been here, how much emphasis there is on the work rate, on the players movements, vertical movements. That is a demanding thing, and I think we've heard a lot about how he's looking for players who fit into that game plan, like in terms of the players he wants to bring in transfers, but also in the players that he has at his disposal, who's going to be able to to do that for him, to fit this demanding play style. And again, not everyone is going to be able to do that. It's not easy, but yeah, the players have to adapt to it. Like it's
Yeah, I mean, you even
once when
saw in the game, you could see him on the touchline, like when the game kind of slowed down, even in moments in the first half, like you could see him like kind of clapping, like, come on, guys, let's
yeah,
keep it moving. Like we can't take our foot off the gas. And so, like you said, month and a half in, the guy didn't even get a full summer. I mean, the sport as a whole has just been nonstop all year. We had some guys, like a handful probably playing in the Euro Cup.
3
So
Slovenians, 2 Serbians.
which are, I think some of them are starters, are quote unquote best players off the bench. So, I mean, not that that's much, but it's like, the guys didn't get a full summer off. We're waiting, you know, post cup final, to see who's gonna end up taking over. Um, the saga ended with all the names that we were linked to, and Alonso just kind of came out of nowhere last minute, but he was signed. Like you said, he has a demanding play style, but it's like the guy's only had a month and a half, if that. Not transfers came in the last week. Other than I think the only first official one once preseason started was Maximovic, which we knew of from
Yeah,
the end of last season. So it's like we're treading on that, like we even mentioned last year, what the expectation is versus reality. Like we got to get it fixed fast, of course, because games are going to just start ramping up. But at the same time, it's like there's not much window for lagging in any aspect, transfers, preparation, anything like, and they're still operating, it seems like we used to in years past where there was like a full summer and stuff, but it's like the game has changed, the schedule's changed. Like you can't wait until last minute. Yeah, the transfer window still ends in August, but it's like by August you've already played at least a handful of games. Even I
yeah,
think, was it you that mentioned, or somebody mentioned in the group chat, that the team we played against, they're already like 5 or 6 games in. This was like their sixth
yeah,
competitive match. So, and it showed, like, while they weren't great, no disrespect to them, their fitness was there. They were down
yeah.
2 goals and they came back in the second half and just they didn't take their foot off the gas. So,
And they look the most threatening late in the game, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Like the team that is more fit is going to obviously have more stamina, and but also going to be the team that's going to threaten in between the 80th and 90th minute. And that was obviously them.
exactly.
We were just holding on at that point, even though obviously we are, you know, kind of objectively the better team. Like we shouldn't be holding on. We should uh be taking it to them like we did in the beginning of the game. That's how the game started. Like we came right through the gates. We were hitting, and not just because of the quick goal, but even if that goal didn't happen, like we we were pressuring them just from right out of the gate, and that's the indication of what it was in like minute 20 versus what it was in minute like 85.
Yeah. I mean, the concern is still there. I think in retrospect, it's kind of nice to see that because we're so used to games under 10 where it's like we'd have to wait 20, 30 minutes before we see the guys kick it in. And a lot of times in the first 20, 30 minutes, we conceded. Whereas now we're coming out hot. But yeah, this same thing. It's like once you get into the 70th, 80th, 90th minute, we're just like not there at all. I mean, I think by the 55th minute, I was like, in the second half, I was like, this is, you can kind of see it coming that it was just the concern was starting to build up more and more. And so hopefully Alonso can get that situated, but we'll see.
And it's a little unfortunate going back to the goal conceded. Obviously, it was unfortunate to concede in general. I think a clean sheet would have been. I think a clean sheet was a lot of our expectations going into this one. I think we really believed that we could keep the clean sheet, and that would obviously go a long way for the second leg. So apart from just conceding the second goal, the way we conceded it, like you just said a little bit ago, was very akin to last season. Like these stupid goals. I'm thinking about like a Kaidin who did that
Just
pass back
mistakes.
to
Yeah,
to
just
to the
always
keeper against
mistakes.
Ike of all opponents, and it just all goes downhill from there. Like it was the same thing, just short pass, even though it has no reason to be a short pass. Like it's just a just pass the ball. Like I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know
not
what
like
else
we're
to
playing
say.
in
Like
heavy rain where there's like maybe the ball got stopped because of weather or pitch conditions. It's like we're in the middle of summer in Greece. Like there's nothing wrong. Just play the right pass, you know?
and both of their best opportunities came from those silly mistakes. The goal itself in the 71st minute, 72nd minute, but also the penalty shout in the 82nd minute. Same thing. It was a short pass, but then also the center backs are looking at each other, and then obviously the player is going to pounce on it. So both of their biggest chances and almost two goals came from these really similar situations, which go back to last year. So it's just the thing. It's like we're our own worst enemy. Like take that out of your game, and yeah, you're talking about a clean sheet, but you're also talking about other than that, the defense wasn't really threatened that much. Like, and I know we can't just erase the mistakes. Like the mistakes are there, and we have to talk about them, and they have to be addressed in the team. But if you take them out, just for the sake of this conversation, both of them didn't really threaten. Our center backs didn't really have to do much, and Dragowski didn't have to do anything really,
Yeah,
other than
there are
one.
maybe a handful of chances the entire game, and I'd say three or four of them came in the second half.
Right. So, you take out the brain lapses, the silly mistakes, and we said this even last season, you take those out and your defense is strong, even though it's not, the final look necessarily, because we're still talking about a left back. We have questions about the center back pairing, but your defense is pretty strong, at least against this quality of opponent, if you just eradicate those mistakes, which
And and the concern there is like it's like we don't even have an excuse like, oh, short summer, the center back pairing they haven't played well long enough or whatever. They had the whole preseason together. Bart was put out there, which who was put on the top shelf in the back of the closet when Terim came over, to now being back to bona fide starter, who's usually our captain, and he did captain that game, usually has a voice and all that. But it's just inexcusable for both him and Jedvai, that lack of communication on that pass that led to that almost penalty that got reversed. Like that cannot be happening. It just can't. Somebody's got to make that call, and if you're wearing that armband, like you're supposed to be the vocal leader. And I said it too in the chat. I was like, it's great to see him out there. He played well in the first half. Not that they were threatened, but he just took control of the game. He made some good passes getting out of, situations. He had the armband. I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of like a resurgence for him. And then the second half, it was the complete opposite. Lots of mistakes, just lack of communication, just it wasn't there, and just it just I don't know. It was a
I'm
very
glad
disappointing second half.
I'm glad you brought that up though with Bart, because it's something I noticed too in the moment, and we did have a chat about it when it happened. both the center backs are to blame there. Like, again, the pass itself back from the middle, from the midfield to the center backs wasn't particularly good. It was kind of similar to what Villena did on the actual goal. But it wasn't as bad. It was right there for them. Like, so I don't blame, I think it was a Rao who passed it back. I don't blame him too much there because I just didn't see that pass as being that bad. But then, like you said, the center backs are staring at each other. And that's why both of them have to be blamed. But then when you add in the factor that, Bart is wearing the armband, take the initiative. Like, if you're not going to take the initiative there as the captain, who is? Like, you lead by example, and that's what you want. Those are captain like qualities, leadership qualities. And you're wearing the armband and you're staring at your center back partner, like
Yeah,
what?
it's not like even the
Like,
ball wasn't, it was unobtainable. Like they both watched it come to their feet and they looked at each other. So even if we want to say the pass was bad, the pass still made it to their feet. And
yeah,
just react to the ball. Don't just sit there and stand there is my point.
yeah,
It's just that kind of little stuff is just so elementary. It's like inexcusable at the top level. Like it just can't
no,
happen.
yeah. Especially if you're wearing the armband. That's the big thing. That's the caveat. And then
And
there
then he
was there
gets
was a
subbed off and he comes off and just storms to the bench, doesn't
no,
even shake the coach's hand, nothing. He just goes straight to the bench. And it's like that arrogance and attitude. You can be mad at yourself all you want. That's fine. Take accountability, but it wasn't a great showing for me for the second half from him. Like you said, wearing the armband, trying to, come back. The whole fan base had your back the whole time. At least we were vocal about it when Tinian was there and benched your butt.
yeah.
And this is your first game back is not a great showing for me.
No, yeah, the bench thing was the next thing I was going to bring up because the camera obviously did pan to that, and like you said, he basically just went straight for the bench. He didn't go to the coach. The coach didn't come to him, and as long as the camera was on that shot, which wasn't long, but I also didn't see him go to anybody else on the bench. Teammates, no teammates came to him. Again, it wasn't
I think
more
it was
than
one of the
5 seconds.
trainers, he gave a high five to, but we've just heard stories and it's kind of like just an I don't know if it's an unspoken rule or myth or whatever, like, you always shake the manager's hand when you're coming off. Like that's just
Yeah, typical.
it's a typical thing. It's a sign of respect. It's a whatever. It's a stand. I mean, we've seen and read stories of like when players are mad coming off and they don't. Like we've read stories where they just get benched the next game or for
Yeah.
multiple games. Like the repercussions of it depending on the coach. But it's just like it didn't seem like Alonso was bothered by it. Obviously, we haven't heard anything, but it just adds to that element of just like the drama that was happening last season with him. Maybe, obviously Teddy might have known a thing or two. And obviously, they obviously know better than us. We're not there with them, but just kind of adds to that element of like, what is going on with Bart? Why was he benched? There were a lot of things about attitude and arrogance, and it kind of showed in this game, honestly.
It did, yeah. I don't think even though those rumors were going around since the Tareem era, not that I didn't believe them, but I was like, a little skeptical about it because like
Yeah, I was
I
just like, oh, this
you
is BS. It's drama. Let's just stir up some, just because somebody's sitting on the bench, we got to make
right.
something of it. I'm right there with you.
We hadn't actually like seen anything, so like it was all like just kind of hearsay and rumor circulating in the fan base. But this was actually like the first time that we kind of got like a visual thing of like, okay, like there might be an attitude thing going on here. So again, nothing is confirmed. We're just going off of what we see and what we hear. But yeah, it is starting to make a little more sense now. And there's some truth in everything. Like, rumors kind of happen for a reason. Like, yes, they're
Yeah.
rumors, they're unconfirmed, but the rumors going around, there's probably some level to truth in it. Um, and maybe there is now that we, have seen something like that. Anyway, we don't have to talk about Bart too much. We're gonna, I think, talk about him a little more once we talk about the signings, because obviously there is a center back signing. But I did want to
Yeah.
focus on some of the good stuff that happened in the game, which um, concerned the guy who took the armband after Bart came off, and that's Vianidis, who for me was the man of the match. I think he was a stud. He did basically everything right. Like, to be fair, I don't think there was anybody who did anything extremely wrong, even given the Villena mistake on the goal or the center back mistake on the penalty shot that happened after. But I think all 11 players were very strong apart from those two silly mistakes. But Vaya stood out to me in a major way. He uh, was so active the whole game.
On
You know,
both
it
sides too.
on both sides, defense and attack, and all our threatening chances actually did start from the right side. Very few came from the left or down the middle, and they kind of all started from Vaya's feet back in our own half. And maybe the best example of that was that chance in the 12th minute that I was saying about, where he started from our own box. He took it up a little bit, then found Mancini through, and then Mancini runs onto it and puts in a good cross to Yeremayev, who just puts it over the bar. But that was like literally in a nutshell what I saw from Vayanidis and the whole right side in the game. It was just kind of like, especially in the first half, it was chance and chance and chance, uh, starting from his feet. And he was everywhere. I was looking for a heat map of the game. Unfortunately, I couldn't find one because I
These
figure it's
games are
because,
hard to find,
yeah,
yeah. But
yeah, I
you,
was
you
I was
bring
I
up
was
a
bummed about it, but
you bring up a good point, which maybe we can kind of slowly segue into signings that were really fortunate and blessed, honestly, in our right back position, which is kind of why we kind of come back to this, I guess, later, but why the Baldock signing doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because Vagianidis and Kotsiras, they're both like really good just utility players. Like they do it on both sides. We saw Kotsiras play multiple positions and yeah, granted, he had some moments towards the end where he didn't look very reassuring, but I'd say for most of the season, he was probably one of the most surprising standout players last season. And Vagianidis, we saw him have like multiple man of the match performances. Yeah, he had some where he was like really a liability, but on both sides, those guys have been doing it now. We've seen for 2, 3 seasons now. Um, and it just, I guess it didn't make sense why we would even question either one of them. Bringing in Baldock and especially with the rumors of Vagianidis possibly leaving, which again, we'll get into that stuff. And to be man of the match, I think playing did he play the whole game? I can't remember, but getting the armband,
played most
I
of it.
think
Yeah.
I think it came out like late in the 80 something minute, but to get the armband as well, just yeah, a lot of that just doesn't make sense. Why would he A get rid of him or get a player to take his position?
Yeah, he played the whole
Uh,
game.
But yeah, I agree. Vagianidis definitely man of the match for me. Like I said, Jurisic played amazing. We
He was
were
excellent.
screaming and yelling though that, his endurance isn't the greatest because he just gives so much 120% when he's out there where we're so confused why Alonso kept him out there longer than I think we both agree he should have. And I think Mancini just overall for winger, I don't say he was excellent, but he was consistent and solid most of the game. Um,
He was he was feeding off of what Bayanese was doing. Obviously, playing on the same side. If your right back is good, yeah, your right wing is probably also good. Like that's just
yeah,
how it
they had
works. If
really good synergy, but even he was sending in corners and free kicks, and they were
Yeah,
really good spots. I mean, there were some where he sent in and Yeremayev and a couple of Yedvay that had headers that are not out, just couldn't get anything on it. I mean, Yeremayev had a couple give me's too that we saw at the post. We're just like, how did he miss that? But those three, yeah, I'd say, like I said, nobody played a bad game, but I'd say those three stood out the most. I think we said Vilena for me, I think was the worst. He's probably getting a lot of hate, which I will say in my defense, I think it's unwarranted because he is a top earner. So obviously, yes, there's that, but I think, it is what it is. That's just the player we have right now. And other than that one terrible pass that ended up leading to the goal, it wasn't terrible. He was just the
no,
worst of the bunch, but it wasn't like he was a liability per se.
I
Uh,
completely agree. I do think he was probably the worst player on the pitch, but that's again in perspective. There wasn't really a bad player necessarily, and also just to be fair on him, obviously he had a very poor season last year. I don't think there's any way about that now that that season's over. And he came in with big expectations. Obviously, like a
yeah.
former wonder kid on high wages. So he did not live up to it. That's 100% true, but he has been putting in the effort, I think, in the preseason. Having watched most of the preseason games and especially the more serious ones towards the end, I've seen some good things from him. Like
You just
I'm
see
not gonna
effort
say,
from him. The thing is, it's like you see him trying to be a workhorse. Like it may not turn out where he has a great game, but it's not like he's like doing it and then just having bad games and like sulking in it or whatever. Like obviously it takes a
yeah,
toll on the player's mental, but you can see he's still out there trying and giving an effort 100% all the time is the thing for me. So
I agree. Yeah, I do think he's trying. There is effort. I think there's signs that we might be getting better performances from him. It's a little too early to tell, but I do like what I'm seeing. I still think he has a gap to make up. Again, like you do have to live up to that wage that you're getting paid, and at the current moment he's not. But I do see signs that he could at least be a good asset for us, which really last year he wasn't, unfortunately. So hopefully
yeah.
there's better days ahead. Juricic is another one that I'm glad you brought up because he's another one that was plagued with injuries last year, came in on high wages, didn't live up to the hype. But in the beginning of the season last year, he was actually the hype was real. Like
Oh,
he
we talked
had
about him like week in and week out when he came on. Like me and you were just like hype man for him, dude. He was
I
really
was ready to
good.
get his jersey, man. Like it was this time a little later. It was like probably like late August when I was considering getting the jersey, and it was the playoff rounds against Braga. But I was like, I mean, it's him or Foti that I'm gonna get the jersey of, and then I didn't end up getting his jersey. But that's how good he was, like in those games in late summer last year. And then obviously stuff happened, injuries, his form dropped, but at the end of the day, he's still a quality player. He
Yeah.
came in with hype. His wage was large, but that's because he's done some good stuff in his career. And I think we're seeing that now that he could really be a big factor for us, and he could be that stud player that we thought we had last year that just kind of didn't pan out. But nothing's over. Like it's a reset. So I'm
Yep.
excited to see what Jurgic can do. It could kind of be like an Itor situation from a couple years ago, where like Itor kind of was
Game changer.
non a
He could be
non-factor
a
and then showed up.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
He's one of those dynamic players where he can really be a game changer. And we saw it in that game. I think out if you take his contribution out, I don't think we would see nearly as much ball progress down the field, creation. He was taking on guys, we say that just like the penalty, he's done that before. Like he kind of dribbles in a crowd. Sometimes we saw that last season, but he's a high risk, high reward type of guy, and sometimes you need that for just to flip a game on its head. Like yeah, and
yeah,
he was playing on the wing, which isn't his natural position typically either.
no, it's not. Obviously, he's a cam by trade. He has played left wing in the past, and we did see him a little bit in that position last year, but it was like basically completely ineffective. But new coach, new year. I'm honestly I'm very excited for what he could offer. I think
Yeah.
there's some good stuff ahead with him, and also just because I forgot to mention it, he when I was talking about the match, the big match moments, he had that beautiful shot that unfortunately was just a couple inches from going in. That was at 2-1. I don't remember if it was before the penalty shot or after, but it was at 2-1. It would have made it 3-1.
Yep.
But he was inside the box. He just kind of it wasn't like a chip, but it was like a half chip. He just kind of softly
It was a
curled it
placement
over and
kick for
around.
sure.
Yeah. And it just hit under the underside of the crossbar,
That's the
but
one
not
where it said
enough.
Yeremayeff just couldn't get in on the end of it either. It's like the
Yeah.
rebound was there and oh
It would have been a beautiful goal, and it would have been, kind of the cherry on top for him in that game, kind of having a great individual performance and also kind of to start his season off the way he would want it. But I don't think it, takes anything away from what he did because, like you said, he was one of the top three performers for us. Um, that's more or less what I want to talk about the game. I don't have anything else. I thought there was a lot of good. Obviously, I do think the scoreline flatters them. We kind of talked about that uh, afterwards because we definitely could have scored more. Definitely a third with that bar.
benefits
Maybe
them
even a
more than
fourth.
us, definitely.
Um, we're kind of lucky to not have it have gone to 2-2. Obviously, it was the right call, so it's not a lot of luck, but could have been 2-2, but it also could have been 4-1. Um, so a little unfortunate there, but for the first official game of the season, it's not bad. And like you said, it's a good thing to know that this was their fourth official game. So they had already played two Europa League qualifying games in the first round against Maribor, and they had already played one league game in Bulgaria, which they won, and this game was their fourth to R1. So like we touched upon before, they are ahead in their their season. Okay, you might sit there and say, well, a difference of being ahead 3 games is not a lot, but at this stage in the season, it is a big difference. Like
Three games
for the
is a big
leg,
difference.
for the
Fitness,
legs, for the
legs, yeah,
lungs. Yep. So
tactics, all that.
and it's important to note too that by the time we play the next game against them, which is on Thursday Greece time, they will have played a fifth game. So by that time, they will have 5 games in their pocket, 5 official games in their pocket to our one official game in our pocket. They're actually playing today, Sunday today, in the league again, their second league game, and that is actually a big game for them because the Plovdiv derby against Lokomotiv. So yeah, they're in the thick of it. But also they're gonna have to be taxed today. Like it's their biggest derby. I guess the best way to put it. It's like if we were playing AEK or Olympiacos. So
Yeah,
it's gonna be a
they
tough.
are in the thick of it, like we talked about how we got to ramp up, and I'm looking at the schedule. After our next game against them, our next game after that isn't for another 17 days. While they're getting to, we play them
No,
on the first.
the third qualifying round would be the week after.
Oh,
It's
well,
not
yeah,
it's
I guess
not it's not
it's
popping
not
off.
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true. But I mean, league
yeah,
game is still not for another couple weeks, 2.5 weeks after that, while they're already up and running. They get to see
yeah,
what their team is and rotation and all that, I guess is my point. While we have to kind
yeah.
of we get a few games. We're lucky because we don't have to start the campaign until what is this, the second round qualifying, but on the flip side, it's still early for us, all things given. But um, my only other question was going to ask you was thoughts on Alonso for the game. Talked about the
So
players and everything, but let's get to the important piece too.
obviously, first official game for him. The sample size is still small. We have a handful of friendlies, and just kind of what he's been saying up until this point. But I'm very pleased. Like from day one, I kind of, you know, jumped on him. Like I think he's saying all the right things, and like yeah, you could say it's just like coach talk, coach speak, just being you know what you typically hear. But I've liked everything that he said. He feels very gentlemanlike. He feels confident but not arrogant. In many ways, similar to Yova. Uh, you know, I don't want to make comparisons with Tareem necessarily, but he's also gotten a lot of good things said about him. Like even Bart came out and aside from all the Bart stuff that we already talked about, he
Yeah.
he he came out and said stuff like that. Like I like the coach, and he said something essentially like what I just said. Like he's confident but not doesn't have an ego or something. Obviously, he was hinting at the Tareem situation for sure in that comment,
1,000%.
but even so, regardless of what he was hinting at, I think it's pretty clear that Alonso does share some similarities with the demeanor that Jova had, which is really nice to see because that was so refreshing to have in our team, but also just in Greek football in general when Jova was around. So I like everything that he's saying, just especially from day one. And as far as the on the pitch stuff goes, yeah, I think the style of play is really good. I haven't seen anything that I dislike. I do think the big concern is going to be can the players keep up with this?
Yeah.
Because now again we touched upon this already a little bit, but we're starting to see a trend a little bit from the Ajax game, from the Netanya game, and now to the first official game. Yes, the stamina drops off in the second half after the 60th minute. Do these players have can these players adapt to his playing style, to his demands, to the work rate that he asks, to the vertical movement that he wants to see in them, to the pressing that he wants to see? Can they do it? Can they do it over 90 minutes? Because you're going to have to be able to do it over 90 minutes at some point. Again, that's the players thing, but I do like what he's seeing. We might see a lot of goals. We might see a lot of chances, which listen, the winner of the past couple Super League titles has been the team with the best attack and generally the best defense. So I'm not saying if we score the most goals in the Super League, we're 100% going to win the league, but you're on a pretty good path. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah,
Like,
the pattern shows.
yes, so you do want to be a high scoring team because the pattern shows, and more goals generally means more wins, generally means more points. So obviously your defense has to be sound too, something that we struggled with last year. But I do like this attacking style. I do like the defense. I thought the defense was pretty solid. Obviously, eradicate those silly mistakes, which are very avoidable. And I think you could have a really good team. I think the style works. The players can adapt to it. I do like what I'm seeing. Like, I don't really have any major complaints. And like I said, the defense wasn't really, you got to take the opponent into consideration, the quality of opponent, with all due respect. But I didn't, this game could have been 3-0. It wasn't, but it could have been 3-0. And we would have been, singing pretty high praise if it was. Obviously at 2-1, you got to dampen it down a little bit, but it was still a very good performance. I'm not, I'm not sure how much more you could want from the first game of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and you mentioned it, and I'd been kind of sitting on this for the last week since the game, basically, that I think we all complain about the subs, not necessarily the subs that were made. I think just more so when they came, the timing they came.
Yeah.
We all thought they were a little late. Um, but on the flip side, thinking about it, I think Alonso, even though these are qualifiers and very important games, it's still the first game of the season for us. And I think it more so points to, like you said, what he expects and demands is pretty high, and the endurance and dynamism and all you want to talk about the attack and constantly moving that. I think Alonso's trying to push his players in that sense to keep him out there to push them to see what they've got. Where I personally think we'll see some adjustment later on once he sees like, okay, these guys can't go this long or that long. He'll start making adjustments a little earlier. I think in a sense, maybe it's bad to say, but it was testing out to see what he's got in a first competitive match. But outside that, I agree. I think we're gonna see a lot of attack, a lot of just like you said, pressing, high movement, constant flow, and you know, we don't ever like to make comparisons, and I guess I won't make the comparison of him to Yova, but you said, we're coming off of who Terim was, and you look at Alonso, like the personalities in the shift is just completely different. Terim had this arrogance, the resume and everything, whereas Alonso just seems very well respected, well spoken, just like a clean cut guy.
Yeah.
Um, and his resume is so-so. He didn't do well with Uruguay at all. I think his coaching career in general hasn't been the greatest, but not the worst. But it's, we can name plenty of solid managers that just don't have a great resume in the past, and everyone finds their one spot and they do well. So, I like it. He's relatively young. The style he plays is well. He's very, like I said, well spoken, well respected. Just he seems approachable. Seems like everyone's bought in so
Yeah.
far. Obviously, as the season goes on and unfolds, we'll see what happens. Particularly, I think like with Aitor, we've heard similar rumors about him, like we did with Bart. He was obviously left off the roster for that game and not even considered. The guy's endured a lot. I can understand, but at the same time, we'll see what happens with that. So yeah, I agree. I like it. I just two-goal lead, anybody else would think, yeah, this is the time where you feel comfortable, where you can still kind of experiment and see what you've got. It did concern me though when we went down 2-1 and we were still not seeing really subs coming forward, just because we've seen the pattern of we know kind of what the players are when we've seen them hit their wall, but I think he's just going to demand more and try to change that out of some guys. Like I said, Jurisic just looked gassed by the 60th minute, and I think he ended up not coming off until, oh, I'm looking, it was late. He was one of the last ones, or did he?
89. Yeah. for Verbic at
89, like
89. Yeah.
that's not what we're used to. Jursic, like I
Man,
mentioned, he's a 50, 60 minute guy, or he's just a dynamic sub for like a good 30, 40 minutes. 90 minutes, you're not going to get 100% out of him for 89 minutes.
Mancini and Juricic were the big ones for me if we're going to
Yeah.
talk about, lack of subs. Mancini came out at the 74th minute, Juricic at the 89th. Those two guys, I agree with you. They were showing their tiredness on the pitch, but also just from what we've seen about them over the past year or so, is like you said, they don't have it in them. Like Mancini has been basically for his whole time with us has been that impact sub, 20, 30 minutes max. That's like, he brings the legs, he brings the pace off the bench, he presses. Um, but as soon as it comes to like playing 60 minutes, and I noticed this even in the friendlies, I don't remember which one, but he played most of the game, if not all the game, in one of the very last friendlies. And I was like, yeah, like I get why both Yova and Tareem primarily used him in this like 20, 30 minute off the bench role, because that's where he's most effective. Like, you have these assets and you need to use them in their most effective way. And
Right,
if
right.
Mancini's most effective way is to, have a 30-minute cameo every game, then so be it. But you can't push him to 70, 80 minutes if it's diminishing returns at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, I do agree that the subs did come a little late. I think Mancini and Jurcic pretty obviously should have come off at the hour mark.
Yet
But again,
if
it
I'd
didn't.
say, yeah, we went 80 minutes with him. He had the same kind of cameo like we've seen with Sporar, where we're like, he's come off in the 60s. Like we can see this is just not going to be their day. Um, but I think he's just going to push the guys to see what he could get the most out of them.
And that's exactly what we were talking about with the play style. Like, he wants to see, like, can this guy give me 90 minutes of what I'm looking for in this play style? And so for some cases the answer will be yes, and for some cases the answer will be no. And like I was saying about Vaya can, because he was effective for all those 90 minutes. Like, I cannot express how impressive his performance was. And obviously his work rate fell with the rest of the teams in the second half. That's, you're just kind of going to mirror what's going on. But even so, he was still very lively uh, up until the 90th minute. So some players are going to be able to do it, and some players aren't. And like you said, I do think there is a certain extent to him testing that out. Um, I also like to point out about Alonso that I think he's already found definitely a respect for the club, but also, a love for the club. It panned to him after the first goal, and I think it was the first goal, and he was, pretty,
You just saw the excitement in him, and
yeah,
coming from Terim, where we see them score goals, Terim was kind of very just stern, stone face, like yeah, but like you saw, and again, it's just a different personality, of course, but with Alonso, you just see all the stuff like the biggest part of this game too is an emotion. If you don't have that from the one running the team, it's really hard to get behind the team and just like really cheer on for the guy either. And Alonso, you're getting back that like that joy you see in him. Even if we played really shaky that second half, it's like you could see he was relieved. He had excitement over certain chances, even if they were missed. We definitely
yeah.
saw that from him.
Yeah, it's like it's only the second qualifying round of Europa League, and I'm not that's a good level for us. I'm not saying it's a bad level, but it's not the highest stakes and not the lowest stakes thing, but he's very, emotional on the touchline after that first goal. And even more than, even the players that were on the pitch, or even Yeremayev who scored. So it's just really nice to see. When I said about respect, there was a video that came out like a day or two before the game, where him and his assistant were walking onto the pitch at Oaka, and he walked around the club's crest on the ground, which small thing, don't have to look into it too much, but it's only been 2 months, not even, and he's already showing that much emotion um on the bench, and conscious enough to not step on the club's badge like that. Those are
You
small
you
things,
say
but they
that,
go a
and I
long way.
saw in warm-ups for the game when the players were coming out that like they panned, I forget who it was, but to one of the players, I think it was one of the youth guys that were on the senior team, and they panned to him, they were coming out, and I saw this kid specifically, but multiple players coming out and walking around the crest.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's just a demand and a respect thing he just asks of within the players and stuff. But like you mentioned, that just like little things like that go such a long way. So
And I'd like to
it's
point out one
good.
more thing before we move on. It's actually really interesting going back to his first press conference now that we have like, you know, context about him and his play style and everything. But everything that he said in that first press conference when he got announced, he's kind of been true to. And I'm not going to go through every one of the points, but I'm going to talk about the transfers for a second because that's where we're going next.
Yep.
But he said from day one that by the time of the first qualifying match, obviously that's where we are now. The goal is for the team to be tactically ready. Like the players got to get up to speed with me, that kind of idea. And the final picture is going to be there at the end of the transfer window. And the moment I was like, are you saying like we're not going to have transfers by the first qualifying round? Is like that what you're hinting at? And I think that's what he was hinting at basically. And he was saying it in his own way and in a respectful and nice way, but he was upfront with us from the very beginning because that's exactly what's happening now. We didn't really get any transfers for the first qualifying round, obviously, except for the guys who came in early on, like not Mancini, Maximovic and Baldock, and the re-signing of Drago. Um, but he's not BSing. He's being upfront with us. He's not telling us what we want to hear and doing something else. He's just saying it how it is and doing it. And so far, I think delivering. So I think that's a really good look on him. And even if we're, a little annoyed that the transfers are taking longer than perhaps they should, it was upfront.
Yeah,
So
the
I can't really bash
transparency is
him.
there. It's good the transparency there compared to like we said, hate doing comparisons, but just based off of what we had with Teddy, there was always like hints at like, oh, you'll find out at the end of the season, or
Right.
I wanted this guy, but it didn't happen, but we move on or whatever. Like there's just always the little like slights and jabs. Whereas with him, you don't see it's no nonsense, just hey, it is what it is. I'm very transparent, and that's what you always ask for us as fans. That's what we look for, because
Yeah.
we're not there behind the scenes to know everything, but we would love to because just we love and adore the club just as much as ownership or wherever else. And so like being able to get that level from the manager, it's really nice.
Yeah. So again, I think we both agree so far. I think we're both pleased. I don't think there's anything to, at least on the pitch, be upset about. The transfers are taking a little longer than I think we all agree they should, but they're starting to come around. So obviously our friends from Australia, Serge and Nick, they talked about kind of the rumors that have been circulating. We know the positions that need to be fortified: the wings, left back, center back, right back. We're completely okay with. There's plenty of depth there, like you touched on earlier, Alki. And the midfield is pretty secure. So it's basically wings, left back, center back, and it's getting there. So the first signing of the season, technically, if you don't consider Maximovic and Drago and Baldock, was Ingi Ingesson, who is familiar with Greece himself. Greeks are familiar with him too. Obviously, he had his stint at PAOK. I think he was even PAOK captain by the end of his time there. And he was very beloved. I remember I was even watching that last game, I think that he played in. Must have been like a playoff game or something. I don't know why I was watching it. But yeah, he went up to what is PAOK, gate four? He went up to gate four, whatever the ultras for PAOK, and he got his farewell and whatever. So he was definitely a fan favorite there. I think his performances were very good there. He was defender of the season, I think, one season while he was there. And then obviously he went to Midtjylland, I think he went to in Denmark and spent a year there. Now he's back uh, at 30 years old. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that signing?
Very random, as have been some of these signings for us, just kind of out of nowhere. The hints were there, but they came out, I don't know, a day or two, and then 2 days later or a day later, they're signed. Whereas usually, there's build up and ramp up to a lot of signings we get. Um, but honestly, I think I'm happy because Akadin obviously didn't work out. Bart was kind of up in the air. For a while, Aral was playing makeshift center back. Magnuson was injured and he's coming back this season, possibly. But he's got two bad knees, regardless of his age. That's just not ideal. So it's like that's always been a position where just like we need to get better. And compared to what we have had in the last few seasons and what we're getting, I think it's a very sound and solid signing. Lots of experience, familiarity with the league. Um, Solid signing. I'm happy with it. Obviously, don't know how it's gonna pan out. But I mean, like I said, 30 kind of falls in line with the type of signings we get. But I
Yep.
mean, it is what it is. He's an Iceland international. We'll see how it works. I'm happy with it. I don't know. Do you recall, was he a free or I don't even remember what we paid for him?
I don't
Um,
know. That's a good question. I don't know, but I would have to guess that he's not a free because he was only a Midtjylland for one season, and I don't think he signed
yeah.
a 1 year deal at this age, 29 then, now 30. I don't think he signed a 1 year deal. It was definitely a multi-year deal. So there must be a fee for him. What that is, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
I think I looked on Transfer Market and he's like valued at like 4 million. I don't think we paid 4 million for him. It has to be less. I'd be surprised if we paid that much for him, but I
Yeah.
would guess that there's probably a fee for him, which we'll maybe hear about later. But yeah, I think it's a really good signing too. I think his resume speaks for itself. Obviously, he has a resume within Greece, which helps. Like you said, knowing the league and all that. And I think honestly, he's part of our best, our strongest center back do. I think the strongest pairing at this moment, on paper at least, is Jedvaj and Ingesson. Um, I think he will slot in pretty easily into the starting lineup, barring any surprises, and it gives us depth in that position where we need it, like you said, because there are question marks. There's question marks about Magnuson. There's question marks about Palmer Brown, uh,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's question marks about there's. Sorry, people
I
might have forgotten.
completely forgot about that. No, honestly, and not as a slight to him, but you brought up him. It's like we've got so many names at the position, but we've only seen like two or three
Right.
guys really.
So we do have depth now at that position because that's five center backs: Jedvaj, Ingesson, Schenkenfeld, Magnuson, Palmer Brown. Um, so that's five center backs. So that's plenty of center backs. But Schenkenfeld has had injury history. Magnuson, of course, coming off of a big injury, but also has had injury history even prior to that. And then Palmer Brown, we know the story. Um, so
That's
it adds depth to
three
it.
out of the five, and one is brand new.
Exactly. Exactly.
Especially with Alonso's demanding play style, endurance and capability is going to be the biggest, you know, strength for them. And I think the only one is Jedvaj right now. Like, yeah, he was injured, but I mean, he played heavy minutes last season, and I'm surprised he wasn't injured as much. But the one
Yep.
other thing I'll mention about Ingy was he's also this type of signing and level player that we need. It's not like he was like a big has been, played in the league and was a bust. Like, unfortunately, like the names of like Vilena and some other guys we've signed. Um, he's played in like the level of leagues that's about around equal, either above or slightly below than Greece. So it's like it's not like I guess my expectation is I would still see the same level of play from him just because he's used to this type of play where it's not like somebody coming in that's, played at the top level. They're diminishing, they might think, oh, I can kind of wing it and play a little easier because it's a lower league. Like, I think this has just been this type of level for him, and I think that's the type of signings and leagues we always need to look into. Obviously, some youth would be great,
Yeah.
because we're always signing, 29, 30 plus year olds, but for the center back position, they always age better anyways, I think. But like I said, just somebody strong, capable, and just that has a solid resume of just where he's played at, I think bodes well for us and the Greek league just as a whole. So
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, the only downside I think, like you mentioned, is the age. Ideally, all of us basically have been calling to get younger. that's the only downside, but it's not a huge deal. Our next signing that we're going to talk about obviously is getting younger. So and again with the center back position, if you're going to have somebody old in a position, it's probably center back. You want the experience there. Center backs, kind of age a little later.
And he's
You don't.
30. If we can get 2 or 3 solid good seasons out of him, that's amazing.
That's
We're not looking
exactly
at
it.
somebody
Like,
for the next 5 or 10 years because we're hardly we get players to stay for that long
right,
anyway. So
right. So, very good signing. I'm very happy with it. While you mentioned, getting younger in the center back position, we did extend Fikai to a new contract, I think through 2028. So that's great. I mean, he's obviously one of our best talents in the center back position, but also in general. Um, my only concern is that these guys have to start getting minutes. Like you can keep signing them to extensions. Yeah, it's great to have them under control. That's very important because anybody can come snatch them up. Uh, since they're these young guys, and we've had that happen with us. So it's good that we're signing them and keeping them under control, but it's just the problem that we've had in the recent years is the wasting of talent. So yeah, you could sign them to these new contracts all you want. You can keep control over them all you want, but if you don't develop them, if you don't give them first team minutes, it's just going to be another one that's gone to waste, which we have plenty of examples of. I don't need to list them now, but that's obviously been the problem. So it's good news, but also like
I
do
think it's been a
something with
big
it. So
problem with a big five across Greece, other than maybe probably PAOK. It's the
yeah,
only team that promotes and you're never gonna know what you've got until you give them opportunity. It's kind of like, yeah, we had bad down years, but that's kind of how the emergence of guys like Buzukis and Kajiovani and stuff came out because, they came out looking like dynamic players. I'm not saying that they were what we thought they were going to be, but you've got to give minutes to those guys. And I think we got some in preseason. Alonso gave some of the guys a good run, but yeah, it's one of those Fikai. It's just what you're mentioning. We extended him is great, but like what are we doing? He's
right,
not getting game time. I don't remember the last time he actually featured in a competitive match that
exactly.
meant of anything. So I don't know. I feel indifferent about those type of extensions because it's like, you know, it would be one thing if we didn't extend him, we saw him go somewhere else, and then he ended up playing amazing. But it's like I really just don't know what we have with him there at this moment.
Right,
The extension
right.
doesn't really mean a whole lot for me, but we did get younger, like you mentioned, though. With if you want to go into the next signing,
Yep.
the quote
Um,
unquote the big one, because it might end up costing us a pretty penny, honestly.
it's definitely a big one. It's obviously Tete from Galatasaray, Brazilian right winger. Um, big signing. I mean, he's a good player, I think, and we're gonna give our opinions on it. But on face value, he's a good player. He's an expensive player for Greek standards, but also our standards specifically. He's valued on transfer market at 10 million. We didn't pay that much. Uh, I think the rumor going around is that we've paid 4.5 million. That could
Or something.
get to
Yeah.
7.5 with bonuses.
Yep.
Um, and if it
Which
gets to
is
7.5, I think I saw on
that's
Transfer Market
big.
Greece, if it gets to 7.5, he would be our seventh, I think, most expensive signing ever. Right behind like Cisse, who was at 8 or 8.5 about. So he's an expensive signing. He's in the top 10 uh costliest players for the club historically. So it's not a small deal. This is a player who as recently as 2 years ago in 2022 was valued at almost 30 million on transfer
Yeah.
market. So he's obviously fallen off a little bit, obviously coming from Turkey because he's been around the block even though he's only 24. He had a stint at Shakhtar where that's where his market value was at 25 million. Then he earned a move to Lyon. Um, he played at Leicester too, where he only featured in 14 games, and then it kind of dropped off from there and um, ended up in Turkey. But you know, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Like once as recently as 2 years ago, 30 million, still at 10 million, still only 24. Like,
So
he's
I'll
been to
preface
some good clubs. Shakhtar, good club. Leicester, obviously good club. They've, been it's not the lesser of 15, 16, but still a very respectable club, and obviously Lyon, one of the biggest clubs in France. So he's been to good teams. He's had the market value, and he's still young.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna at least preface this with when you mentioned this is I think he's a good signing. Good signing in the essence of he's high risk, high reward, value. Um, he's young. He's a very dynamic player if he's in form. If we're talking about is he a good signing for the club or not, just based on play and quality, I'd say no, because obviously, you talk to anyone outside of our scope that has seen him play and stuff, he played horrible in Turkey last year.
Right.
Leicester didn't feature much. Like it's been about 2 or 3 seasons before anyone's seen what his quality's at. So going from 30 down to 10. But I mean, I think the value's still there just simply because of age and he's Brazilian. Um, but at the same scope, like it's just something, these are the type of signings we just have to like take a swing at, honestly. And we typically haven't. Because if you watch his games, like his talent, he's one of those wingers that will create chances and he'll take players on. Very creative, crafty type of player. And we just haven't seen that in a very long time. I told you guys, I'd seen him briefly over the years, but he really reminds me of a like Levi Garcia type of player. Obviously, if he can stay healthy, he's much younger, but he's just a dynamic, like game-changing type of player. He can be very good or, you know, be very bad, but it's in a position we need strengthening on. I think the wings, we lost I not Aitor, we lost Palacios. Aitor isn't in the mix. We really only have Mancini and Limnos. Mancini can't go 90 minutes. Limnos, we don't know what he is. So, like, again, another one of those positions similar to center back where we've got so many names, but we've only got right now at the moment really one guy that can play starter caliber minutes. We've had Jurisic playing on the wing, which isn't his natural position. So I'm happy and excited that we got him because that can means we can shift Mancini over to left. He is left-footed, so he's an inverted winger, like we mentioned. Um, and yeah, I'm excited just simply for the fact, yeah, in hindsight, it's like a lot of money for by our standards, but like I said, it's high risk, high reward. So it is a very risky signing because it could just turn out to be a dud, and then we've spent a lot of money. Um, but it could bode well because yeah, he's gone from big clubs to now dropped to Turkey and Greece. But I think sometimes we've seen that with so many players just need that reset to
Yeah.
revitalize their career. He's 24, guys. I mean, it's big money. I think it seems like the way it's worded, it's pointing to it's a permanent signing. I can't imagine it would be a loan, but the rumors in the beginning when we were linked to him was we were looking for a loan deal. It seems like they'll paying that kind of money. It would be absurd to pay that kind of money if it's a loan deal, honestly. So I'm pretty sure it's a permanent transfer. We just don't have any
Yeah.
details if, they announced him. I don't think they announced, did they announce Alex? Do you know? I mean, they made it official on social media, but I don't know if they announced like contract details, how long he signed for. I don't recall
I
seeing any of that. So
I thought I saw somewhere that he might be making over 2 million a year. I don't. Maybe I dreamt that, so don't quote me on that. But
yeah.
he's definitely going to be on high wages either way, whether
High
it's a million
wages,
and
we
a
paid a
half, two
high
million, two and a
fee.
half.
We
Like,
just don't know how long he's around for, I guess is my point either, though. We don't know if he signed to like 28 or 27, whatever it is.
yeah, I don't know if I saw that either. Listen, I would
Which
I
is
would
it's
just
just
guess.
odd.
I would guess that I think it's 100% permanent. I think that was confirmed, and I do think. I mean, listen, it's going to be at least 3 years. Like at this stage in his career and where he's
Yeah.
at, kind of like it's not going to be a short deal. I do think. Again, I have a vague memory that maybe it's 4 years, but I don't remember where I saw that or if I even saw that. But he's going to be on high wages. I think he's going to be here for a while. I think he's a good signing. Like you said, it is risk reward. Like he's coming off of what you would have to consider bad form. He in 33 Turkish Super League appearances, he has no goals, and just 4 assists. So obviously, from your attacking player, that's not what you want. He's not a center forward. He's not the going to be the source of all your goals. But in 33 appearances as a right winger, On a good team, Galatasaray, you would expect, more than 0 goals, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was primarily a bench option there. He's only over those 33 games, he's only accumulated just over 1,000 minutes, which just comes up to just over 30 minutes per game. So that tells
Yeah.
you kind of how he's featured there. I don't know how many of those were starts, but an average of 30 minutes, most of those are gonna be coming off the bench. So, was he getting the chances? Was he not getting the chances? I don't know, but you definitely have to be doing better than 0 goals and 4 assists in 33 matches. We're gonna need better than that. Galatasaray needs better than that. Surely, that's why they wanted to move on from him, and we're gonna need better from that. And hopefully, we do get better than that. That's the kind of risk reward you're talking about. But I think it's all there for him to succeed. He definitely feels wanted. We broke the bank for him. We wanted to bring him in. I saw his interaction with Alonso in one of those short videos that the club posted. They hugged each other. Like, I think he feels wanted by the club and the coach. Surely he's going to be one of the first teams, one of the first names on the team sheet every week. He's going to be our starting winger for that kind of money,
It's gonna have to
both
be. I mean,
both transfer and wage. Yeah, he's going to be your starting right winger in every game. Probably, yeah, he's going to get the off rest against Lamia or whatever. But Europe, derbies in Greece, like this is your guy. It's a statement of intent. So yeah, we're going to need better than 0 goals, 4 assists in 33 games.
yeah, I mean, I'm looking over. I mean, obviously, we're basing this off of SofaScore because I don't know of any, you know, good quantitative sites to be able to check, statistics and everything outside of like, for lower leagues. But it looks like he had, decent performances. Like ratings, I think his average match rating was like 6.5, 6.6. So I didn't see any dud games in there where he was like a 6.1 or a 5.9 or anything. It seemed like everything was in the mid sixes, some 7 plus, but it seems like he's just, he's there, but not really getting the end product that's needed from him. So hopefully this is a good reset for him. Like I said, high fee, high wages. I think the expectation is going to be high.
Yeah,
Just
for
considering the
sure.
summer we've had of who we've been linked to, with starting from like coaching from like guys like Sari down to now we ended up with Alonso, but other names, with players we had been linked to with I think Pavon and Tete, and there were a couple ones. Tete ended up being the out of nowhere, and it all kind of happened within I'd say what, like 4 or 5 days or something. Like,
Well, that's what I wanted to, when you because you said that same thing about Ingesson, and we've been talking about it since it happened. And someone pointed out, I think maybe Nick in the chat pointed out, these deals often come out of nowhere, because if it becomes kind of open, Olympiacos, AEK are going to swoop in and either take the player, or at the very least make their own offer. So
yeah.
often that these deals that we make, that we want to happen, that we're really serious about, we have to keep on lock, because the climate in the Super League now is that kind of everyone has the same amount of funds. Everyone is in the same boat. Like, kind of everyone's competing. Everyone's on the same level. Everyone can pay the money. So it becomes known, and your competitor is going to come and swoop in and steal it from you. Look at what happened with Antuna. We were rumored with him for a long time, even going back to last summer, even maybe 2 summers ago, and all of a sudden, Ike was the one that was close to signing him. Okay, they didn't end up signing him, but they were in within like 5 days, they got closer seemingly than we did over like 2 years.
I mean, there's a lot
So
of hijacking, as they say, in deals we've seen. I mean, we saw it with Bakasetas, Baldock. Like other teams in Greece wanted him, and it just ended up being who was ready to just pay the price. So yeah,
exactly. Like, so I'm happy that the Ingesson deal was kept on lock, because we obviously clearly wanted him, and we didn't want to lose him, especially to a competitor. And Tete, kind of, it wasn't that quiet with Tete as it was with Ingesson, but you know, more quiet than you'd expect from a transfer. But again, I'm kind of happy about it, because if we're serious about these players, you don't want to be losing them, especially to your competitors. So yeah, there is kind of a pattern, which is nice that you're pointing out. Also, Tete comes into that expectation, not only the money, uh, but he's taking the number 10 shirt, which kind of, it goes from one Brazilian. Obviously, Bernard was the last one to wear it. goes from one Brazilian to another, and yeah, it comes with some expectation. Like we really fell in love with Bernard by the end of his time here, uh, and hopefully he keeps that going with a Brazilian rep.
Yeah.
Um, so those are the confirmed transfers, Ingesson and Tete. We could touch a little bit about what we still need. Obviously, there's names floating around. It seems like we still need another starting caliber winger. The police rumors have been heating up. It's been kind of happening for 2 weeks now, maybe 3 weeks.
I mean, Man
Um,
United player, so it doesn't surprise me that that's going to drag on probably into August easily, I'd
Man
say.
United player. The kind of the backstory with that is Diego Alonso has history with him from the Uruguayan national team. Pelistri is, I think I would say still considered a high talent, but a couple of years ago he was considered like a really high talent.
Yeah.
Obviously, youth player for United that is not ready to break into the team, but they were trusting him, keeping him under control. Now it seems like they've kind of let off the gas a little bit with him. It seems like Ten Hag doesn't favor him that much. He's giving more opportunities to Anthony, like I think Sturge pointed out on the last pod. Obviously, Sturge is the man to talk to because he follows United. But it's ramping up. Like just 1 or 2 weeks ago, it seemed like, oh, this is kind of like a fever dream. Like we're kind of punching here, but it's getting more press, and
I mean, it all
it's
makes
see
sense pointing at it. Like you said, he's got history, he's young, he's on the outs with a top club, he's been bounced around. I would be
he needs
super
game time.
excited. He needs game time. I would be super excited because, like I said, I followed him since he was a very high touted prospect. He's a very dynamic player. He'd fit what we need. Pairing him with Tete would be amazing. The history's there. It's just a matter of getting the deal over the line. Like I said, we're dealing with United, so he's probably on high wages. There's
Yep.
lots of levels and layers to getting this deal to work out, I would imagine. But just from what we're linked with, that's the one that's been lingering the longest. It seems like almost as long as like how we lingered with sorry for the coach. Um, and so yeah, it would all make sense. I mean, obviously he could probably get deals or offers at a higher
Yeah.
level league. But it doesn't seem like we've seen. I've been keeping tabs. It doesn't seem like there's really any other teams from those leagues that are interested, maybe mid to lower table, like in Spain or Italy or something like that might come in. But
But to
yeah,
be fair, if we do get this over the line, in my opinion, it is full credit to Alonso because he's using the connections that he comes with, which again, I'm going back to something I said earlier. He's saying it as it is. Like he said this even in that first press conference, like we're gonna look all over, but I know the markets in Mexico because he coached there. I know the markets in South America because
yep.
obviously he's coached the Uruguayan national team. And he's using those connections and that knowledge right now. Like, if we get Palistri, who he's had history with, it's full credit to Diego Alonso because I'm sure someone like Palistri, yeah, he's looking for game time, but like you said, he could find game time at a higher level than the Greek league. But he's worked with this coach before. He clearly likes the proposition of working with this coach again. So, yeah, I can't emphasize enough. We talked a lot about when Tareem was around how he, kind of brought a rep and he was able to get some pretty big moves over the line because of his name. But if Alonso gets this done, it would be completely full credit to him because this is a player who, you know,
22 years old, so younger even
22,
than
yeah,
Tete. Like he's still, developing. But I mean,
he's got his
these are
whole
the
future
type of
ahead of him.
players we need. I know we talk about all the time. Coots has been harping on this for 2 seasons now. Like that's the type of market, like the South American, Mexico, like that's the type of market we need to tap into because you can get good, dynamic players even if you're borrowing them for a year or two. Young wages are going to be way easier than some of these just European talents, quote unquote, or the experienced guys you're going to get on high wages that just don't pan out. I'd rather us spend 1 million a season on someone like Tete, for example, and doesn't pan out, obviously the fee, but guys like Pelistri, things like that, rather than, we've seen so many names come and go. I mean, um, the center back that we pulled for a loan for under Teddy that wanted him and barely played him. I'm his name is just
Hugo.
dropping. There we go.
Hugo.
Who had a very strong resume. We're like, how are we managing a guy like this? Or Maximovic, for example, who's, we don't know what that's going to look like. Another guy that just a few seasons ago was valued at 30 million.
Great
Um,
point.
so I like it. The names we've been linked with are great. They're just links, though, as we say all the time. Sometimes these out of nowhere things, but Pelistri is the one that I would like to see the most just pan out because it's a position we need. Uh, Young, dynamic, just it all makes sense.
Yeah. I would be. I think if Police comes, I think that would be. I mean, I don't think any Ajax fans are listening to this right now, but I think that would be the transfer of the summer so far. I think that would be even bigger than Lamella because Um, Lamella comes with a name. He's already established his name, but he's on his way to out, just to be quite frank. He's 32. Like I'm sure Lamella is going to bring something really good to the Greek league, and it's really nice to see those big names kind of coming back because it happened like in the early 2000s and then it didn't really happen in the 2010s. And now we're kind of seeing it again with like Marcelo, James, Lamella.
They're one season borrows and that's it. Like
Yeah,
Lamella's at that point in his career, like he'll be great for Ike, and Ike do specialize in that. They're getting older every year, but they're still competing. But he'll be great for them probably for this
yeah.
next season, maybe another season after that, and then they'll fall off. Kind of like Amrabat. He's become like a 15, 20-minute player for them. He's older. That's just for me, that's not the type of players we need. Even Olympiacos has done that in the past, but they've also got the depth and funds to be able to afford that luxury where right now we're all over the place, honestly.
And again, yeah, I'm not trying to take anything away from that Lamella deal. It's a great deal for Ajax and for the league in general, but quite frankly, I'd much rather if you showed me give me Lamella or give me Palistri, I would 100% take Palistri. The guy's 10 years younger than Lamella. He's got his future ahead of him rather than his future behind him, or in the past, whatever.
He's
But
got something to play
that
for is my thing with these kind of guys.
he's got something to play for, and he could be an asset to the club. The thing with Lamella is like, yes, you're bringing in a big name, but he's not an asset to the club. Pelistri, especially if we sign him on a permanent, which by the way is kind of looking like could be more likely than we originally thought. That
Yep.
would be huge for the club. This is a player that we're talking about 25 million for Forti. This is a player who could easily reach that after a couple good seasons. Still
Oh yeah.
22. The talent was there and still is there. So that those are the kind of players you want to sign. So like I started saying, if we get this done, I believe, in my humble opinion, that this would be the signing of the summer so far, both for us personally, but for the league in general. Anyway, we've talked about Polistri enough. I hope it happens. I think a front line of Polistri, Tete, and Foti is. I mean,
It's really our last chance to really just maximize Foti too.
exactly.
Like
Great
he
point.
carried us over the line last year in a lot of stuff, and we saw just the workload obviously became a burden on him. But he's coming out. Obviously, he's 25, 26, I think. He's not a youth anymore, but he's becoming a focal point for the league, and he's starting with Ethniki now too over the likes of Yakumakis and Pavlidis. Like this is time to really maximize in on that. If you're going to demand 30 million, which I think we're all in agreement of, but you really have to go into this next season and really double down on that because
Yeah,
if his workload gets to him and he doesn't have the same productivity, it could potentially become a miss that we missed out on, 20, $25 million deal and he drops down to like let's say 5 or 10. Not that I think it'll happen. I have really high hopes and think he'll still continue to produce, but this is the year to really because I even if he has a good season, I don't see him staying around past this season.
I
Or
think
he
that's
might
kind
not
of
even stay around this whole season at this point. Like,
I think that's kind of the hope from everyone. I think he's been pretty vocal that like he would like to stay another season, and he's definitely willing to do that. The club has obviously come out many times saying that he's not for sale, but basically the underlying thing is like he's not for sale unless you get to 30 million. That's kind of like what the club's stance has been, despite what we keep hearing from like foreign journalists, but it's been consistent from the club at least. And I
And
think
it's
that's what we
good.
gotta
They have
value
to
the
set
most.
that they have to set that expectation and boundary. Just, if you're gonna like coming to be a Dortmund fan, we had Dembele, who's obviously gone through whatever, but they came out and said like not necessarily he's not for sale, but yeah, he's for sale 150 million, and then Barcelona comes up and pays it. So it's like we got to set that ridiculous price to kind of ward off like he's not for sale, but if someone's going to pay it, then we'll be like, yeah, take it. But I think that's kind of the direction they're going in with, okay, he's not for sale, but if you want to buy him, here's the price. It's some ridiculous number that no one's willing to pay. And we've seen Sporting and
Bologna.
Bologna kind of be in the mix for a while, 15 million, 20 million, 21, but it doesn't seem like they're really willing to go higher than that, which is fine. Like I said, we have no qualms about keeping Foti around. We'd rather him because, he's just such a big asset, but um yeah, that's kind of where we're at with everything.
Um, what else? I mean, that's more or less it. Everything else is just, kind of faint rumors. We were linked with the left back Martin from Spain. It looks like that's kind of died down in the
Yeah.
past week. Uh, in terms of, it looks like the left back is going to come from Spain or Portugal. That's kind of what the rumor is. Leo Fotos has been kind of reporting that that is the primary area where Alonso is looking for a left back. There was a rumor that we were linked. I don't know how solid this is, but we were linked to a left back from Ajax. Um, I don't remember what his name was exactly, but I do know that they have quite a bit of left back depth because this guy Hato started their game in European qualifying, their last game against Vojvodina, and they also have Borna Sosa, the Croatian, who's a left back by trade, and the third one is the one that we were um, uh, kind of loosely linked with. So they have left back depth. So it would kind of make sense for the player and for why might be looking to offload another left back. But it did come out that I think the player was not looking to go to
Make a
Greece.
move. Yeah.
I think he's pretty young. He might be like around the age of Pellistri and Tete, so he just wasn't looking for a move out of what's a good league in the Netherlands. So anyway, that's just a bunch of rumors. The other one is Vianides. We kind of touched upon it earlier. He was heavily linked over the past week to go to Brazil and Botafogo. Um, it was a rumor of like 6.5 million transfer. And then obviously a portion of that goes to Inter because they've held a sell on fee. So we if it was in fact 6.5, we'd get about 4 million of that. Um, and then Vianides put in a man of the match performance in the first European game of the season. So he even posted on, I don't know if you saw this, Alki, but he even posted on Instagram, and his caption from that game was, like European nights just like hit different basically. And I was like,
Yeah, I saw that.
well, I don't know.
And I
So
guess before we jump down, like why would he go to Brazil? Well, I don't even know if you know, but the owners of that club are also owners of, is it Marseille,
Leon
Lyon,
and
and
Crystal
one
Palace,
in Crystal Palace. So like, there's definitely a good chance that he goes there, there would be an opportunity for him to get to Europe or even Premier
right?
League at some point. So, very similar, like how, Marinakis uses Nottingham and Olympiacos back and forth type of deal. Um, so Brazil doesn't sound all that intriguing on paper. Like, why would you go from Greece for someone that's what he's like 23, 24, I think, Vianides, if
Not
that,
24, 23 max, maybe
23,
22.
22 maybe, on the ups in their career, and you'd go to Brazil. It wouldn't make
Yeah,
sense, but there's that connection. There's a path for him to get to Europe or even the
right,
top leagues, even at that.
right.
Lyon's no slouch. They've got lots of rich history. And then Crystal Palace, of course. Um, Premier League, which is I think the
Yeah,
dream for a lot of these guys. So, but it doesn't, I don't know, that whole link has been kind of weird for me because the journalists have been reporting that, he had been pushing or wanting the move to get it over the line. Didn't happen, but then there's a lot of body language and like you said from posts and social media and stuff that it doesn't seem like he wants to. Like he was giving the armband, he got almost 90 minutes. Like for someone that is linked and playing in European nights, the way he posts and stuff, like, and if it's basically a deal that's nearly done, I would imagine they'd say like, well, don't play him 90 minutes in fear of injury or whatever. It seems like it's the polar opposite. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I guess that's my kind of take or opinion on that is like, I don't know how much I really want to believe into that,
Yeah.
that he'd go.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up really good points with like the club synergy between like the shared ownership. I don't think it would be the worst move for him. Obviously, eyebrow raising to go to Brazil, but he might go to Brazil this summer, let's just say hypothetically, and then in 2 years he might find himself at Crystal Palace at 25 years old, playing for a solid mid-table club in England. So it's not the weirdest thing, not the most traditional way you would do it, I guess. But at the same time, I do agree with you that like I would really love to see him kept this season, maybe even another season after that. I think again, we're not going to go crazy with it, but it's only one game. But what he showed in that first game on Thursday, not only was it a great individual performance, but I stressed it so much already that like he fits into this play style that Alonso wants to play, and he could do it. Like if Alonso is looking for players, not only transfer wise, but the players in the club already, if he's looking for players who can give him what he's looking for, fit into his style of play, well, Viannidis, at least in one game so far, has proven it. He checked all the boxes, and I'm sure Alonso left that game and was very satisfied with what he saw. So I, I would hope that Alonso is actually pushing to keep him rather than selling him because he's going to have a big say in it, I think. And after that game on Thursday, I would hope that that's the case because he could be really effective for the coach and for the team. Um, so we'll see how that unfolds. It's not the worst thing. Like 6.5 is probably a good price for him. Unfortunately, we do only get 4 million of that.
Yeah.
But again, this is a player who could probably exceed 10 million if he has the season that he can have under Alonso. Next summer, we could be talking about over 10 million. Um,
So because you're talking about next summer, I have this one question then for you. Let's take into the factor that let's say we sign Pelistri.
yeah,
Would this be a make or break season before you're like, okay, let's sell off, Forti, Vagianidis, the guys that are worth money. If we go into the season with Alonso, the play style he plays, so Vagianidis fits him well. You have dynamic wingers, Tete, Palistri, Forti up top, Bakasetas in the middle, who many have their opinion on, but just very solid. You've got a good core of like 4 or 5 guys right there of a starting 11. What would your expectation be? Like for me, in my mind, the style Alonso plays, obviously he's here, signed what, like a 5-year contract or whatnot. But bringing in these young, dynamic players, adding to the youth that we already have with a good blend of some veterans, in my mind, it's kind of make or break for me in my mind.
yeah, I get what you're saying. I would have to agree. Just
Not
to
in a
go through
sense
the
just
lot.
cut it all and rebuild it, but then you really have to start considering offers for Fortis and Vagianidis, like the guys that are worth it is I guess what I'm getting at. If they,
Well,
no title, no nothing, no European run, like
this is the problem that you're looking at. Like, if you go into this season with this sort of lineup, and this sort of lineup that I'm talking about is Drago in goal, Vianney's on the right, center back pairing, Jedvaj Ingesson, left back has to be a transfer. The midfield is some combination of Maximovic, Baca, Cherin, and Arau. I know there's one extra guy in there, but those are your main four options, three of which will play most of the games. And then the front line of Palistri, Tete, and Foti. That is a very strong lineup. Like, you're completely right. My expectation with that lineup would be winning the league. Like, I know it's a high expectation. I have had that expectation in the past years too. Obviously, it hasn't panned out, but that lineup is a serious lineup. You have the best attack. You have the best front three in Greece. I think hands down. Are the other teams also getting better? Yes, of course they are. So you have to take that into consideration. But you have with those three players, you have an attacking line that has a market value of over 50 million. You know, 40, 25, and the other guys 10 each. Okay, just under 50 million, really. But
On the
more or less,
conservative
almost.
side, I mean, those guys are young and can exceed, but yeah, I guess that's my point of like what your expectation would be. Of course, this is assuming we get Pelistri, but it kind of also points to like you mentioned earlier, we'd get into like the needs. What are the needs on the roster? And when you mention that, we can get into like, yeah, we'll need depth, but I think the midfield shows there. Um, Even if we don't bring in a transfer in left back and we have to just deal with Maldenovic, let's say, or play Kotsiras out of position, like you're talking, I'd say at least seven guys at minimum that are very solid and would start on any other team possibly in the
Yep,
league.
yep.
So again, assuming we bring in Pulisic, but even take him out of the equation, what we've brought in and what we have on paper looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And like you said, yeah, my expectation is if that is the team, the one I just listed, obviously police are included on the left side. Yeah, my expectation is winning the league for sure. I mean, winning the double, really. Like, why not at that point? Like, you have it all in front of you, and a good European run. And if all that happens, again, we're getting super hypothetical now. But if all that
Yeah, of
happens, and you
course.
were you were hinting at this, what do you do at the end of the season? Like, or do you sell, or do you actually make a decision and be like, this is a core, like you're trying to build something long term. Do you sell and hopefully the obviously the reasonable thing would be reinvest if you sell,
Of
but do you
course.
sell and reinvest and rebuild and keep that going, kind of like
The,
the
the
template that
traditional
like
way of
Ajax
thinking of
does?
like
Yeah, yeah.
fans, yeah.
Or do you actually say, like, fuck it, like I'm gonna
We
keep buying
got it
these.
and yeah.
I'm gonna keep buying these. I'm gonna keep Palistri as long as I can. I'm gonna keep Tete as long as I can. I'm gonna even keep Forti as long as I can. Like, I'm using these 5, 6 players as my core to build something that can be sustained for 5+ years. That's gonna be a question at the end of the season. I don't know, and that's kind of a good scenario to be in. That's like the good problem kind of thing. But that is going to be a question that is raised if that happens, because this is the where we need it to go, younger. And if you are younger and you have these guys who have a future ahead of them, who are anywhere between 20 and 24 years old, like all these players that we listed, yeah, that's what's going to happen. People are going to come, chasing
Asking
after
for
you.
yeah.
That's what
On the
happened with Leicester in 15-16. It happened with Ajax a couple of years ago in like 19-20 when they made
Yep.
the semifinals. Like, that's just what happened. So again, I'm not saying we're making Champions League semifinals. Obviously, that's not where we are. But if you win the league, if you win the double, if you have like a good Europa League campaign, and you have all these 20 to 24-year-olds, yeah, that's gonna happen.
On the flip side, assuming we get all that, no league title, no cup, no European run, do you start selling at that point?
I think
Obviously, you'd be in a situation where you'd probably be selling lower than if you did win, but I guess I'm trying to gauge of take Policia even out of this equation right now. Since we're first game of the season, it's a long season ahead, but like to kind of gauge what are our expectations of the season coming up realistically. Of course, the goal should always be title and or cup and staying in Europe. But I want to kind of maybe take it a step further of just realistic expectations. It's one game, obviously, hard to say, but I'm trying to gauge what are your expectations for this year.
right now, given what we have right now, and obviously, like you said, taking Policia out of the equation, just going off of what we have, um, I think this team is good enough to compete for the title. Like I mentioned, everyone has gotten a little better. Like, Ajax made moves. PAOK is obviously the defending champions, and they all already have a good young core. Olympiacos had a very good European season. Can't say anything else about it. Um, so all the four teams are going to be competitors. I think right now we can compete for the title, but I think at the current moment we are probably just behind just because we weren't, we finished fourth. So we kind of essentially have the most ground to make up. Like if you want to go fourth to first, you have the most ground to make up, while someone else like Ajax, who was second, has theoretically less ground to make up. So I don't know right now if we've done enough to jump from 4 to 1, but I do think we are on the way there. So right now, like if you had to, tell me predict the finish, I would say probably somewhere between second and third. That would be my prediction right now. You add Palistri into the equation, you add a solid left back into the equation, you have depth, you have quality. Yeah, I would like us to win the title, 100%. Like, and I don't think I'm just being blindly optimistic. I think the facts are there. Like I said, quality and depth. That's what you need for a long season of 40+ games. So um, I like where it's going. I like where it's going. As far as the European expectation, I mean, the European expectation right now is you have to make league stage. You have to
Yeah,
make
of
league stage of either
course.
European competition, whether that's Europa League or Conference League. That's non-negotiable. That was the expectation before anybody came in, before you made any signings, before
Absolutely.
Alonso came in. That
Yeah.
where the club is right now, you need to be in European group stage, which is now league stage, non-negotiable. You need the funds, you need the exposure, you need the rep, you need the coefficient points to start going up because of what where we are. So that is always going to be the expectation. Now, if we improve even more and get Palistri and get a good left back and have that depth and quality, my expectation might even be get knockout stage and do a little run. Obviously, it changes whether you end up getting Europa or conference. Your expectations are different, but either way, even if it's the harder one, that being Europa, yeah, my expectation with a little bit more bolstering is at the very minimum knockout stage. We're going to be
Yeah.
in the last pot. Unfortunately, that hurts. There are 8 games in the league stage, and on paper, all the 8 games are going to be against tougher opponents because they're all going to be in higher pots than us. Um, but you know, on paper you have a good team, and if it wasn't for the coefficient points, we would be in a higher pot than the last pot, and that's not wishful thinking. That's just kind of the reality. Like, look at the teams
Yeah.
that we're projected to be in the pot with in Conference League. Like, again, all due respect, they're pretty small clubs. So you know that was a long answer, but
No,
my
I get it.
expectation, yeah,
It's just, yeah, kind of just trying to gauge. And of course, it's a podcast and we have to just kind of see where we're at, throughout the stages of the season, but just kind of wanted to see where you're at. I mean, I agree. I think, but you mentioned depth and quality, and we kind of talked about it when we previewed game one. I really think those are the two I would say quality depth is where I'm going with this, is where we lack. Like, of course, I take Palistri over getting good backups, but on paper right now, I'd say we're closer to third, maybe fourth and second. Just because I think the other teams in league just have better depth than us. We have depth, but when we looked at like subs like the Limnos and Perez is out right now and just not even, he's only getting older. Aitor is out of the mix. We don't have a backup left back, I don't think.
oh,
Um, we don't really have a third winger, right? We'd have
I
to look
mean,
at the youth.
we have a list of like 4 or 5 wingers, but on each side, yeah, our depth is probably like two and a half because Mancini, Aitor, Verbic, Juricic, not Juricic, sorry,
Limnos. Those are the
Limnos,
four,
yeah.
right?
So we have 4 now. Now Tete's 5. With Police, it'd be 6. So yeah, you'd have 3 on each side. And actually, at that point, I'd expect at least one to be sold. I think 5
Yeah.
wingers is a good place to be.
It's just more of like who's really worthy of a good, you know, backup role. Limnos, we've seen like he had that important goal in the cup run last year, but we really haven't seen much from him. Verbic had a lot of stuff going on, but he kind of came back on towards the end of the season and he had a very solid Euro run. Um, but again, that's kind of very just inconsistent. So I guess my thing is our backups, or the backups to the great starting lineup, are just kind of very big question marks outside of maybe the midfield right now. Um, we've got big question marks in the center backs. It's not
Yeah.
even a question mark at the left back. We don't have anything. I really think the right back and probably the midfield is really the only position where we're like, we're okay.
Yeah,
Everything else is either a question mark or a need for
yeah,
at least a backup, if not a starter, like a better
right.
starting caliber. So that's why I guess my expectations, oh, my voice squeaking.
Yeah,
My expectations kind of drop a little bit going into the season just because of that's where we're at. And we've talked about in previous seasons. I think coaches, no matter how much we think of Terim, even for example, like both coaches, I think got a lot more out of the guys than what really they're capable of. Arao playing center back and doing an amazing job with Jedvaj for 75% of the season, if not more. Last year, Foti carrying the workload and being our biggest playmaker and one of the highest producers in Greece in general.
yep,
Um, you know, it's just there's too many inconsistencies and I think we've overachieved and underachieved. And that's why I think just you can only do that so many seasons in a row, personally.
right.
But it all remains to be seen. Maybe Alonso pulls out the same thing, maybe he can get more out of the guys than what we think. We're just a couple guys on a podcast or group of guys just as fans speculating here, but
Yeah.
we'll
My
see.
my AirPods died. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're good. You're good.
That's how long we've been going, so I guess that's a sign to wrap it up. Anyway, yeah, I think you raise all the good points. It's a work in progress. Like, it's still happening. Did it happen a little later than we wanted to and expected? Sure, but it's still a work in progress, and we still have, as of today, just over a month left in the transfer window, and things are heating up. Like I would expect a transfer this week. Whether that's Pellistri or a left back, I would expect either one winger or one left back to be announced this week, and hopefully it's a race against the clock for the next qualifying round. Obviously, they wouldn't be available for the game on Thursday, but you would hope to get them into the squad for the next round.
Yeah.
Which, good segue to mention that we were drawn. If we do advance past Botev in the Europa League qualifying, we were drawn to face the winner of Ajax or Vojvodina. So they also played the first leg of their matchup. Ajax won narrowly 1-0 at home. And actually it took them until the very end to get that one goal. It was 0-0 for the whole game. And I think they scored in like the 88th minute or something to take a
Yep.
1-0 advantage into the second leg. Um, so it's an unfortunate draw. Given the list of potential opponents in the third qualifying round, there were kind of two that you would want to avoid, and that was Ajax, who needs no introduction, and Braga, who obviously also doesn't really need an introduction. We are familiar with from last season, and unfortunately, we did not steer clear of well, we steered clear of Braga, but not Ajax, which probably out of the potential opponents was the most difficult opponent for us to face. Ajax is Ajax. They, we
But you say that, and I looked over. I mean, I haven't really followed them for a season or two, but they've got a very new young coach. Their squad is kind of, I mean, they've still got a lot of good talent there, but not to the expectation. I guess they're in this competition obviously because of where they've fallen. It's kind of their level right now. Maybe they are Europa League, but they're definitely not. They're closer to our competition level in a sense of like the European qualifiers, closer to that than they are to Champions League, I'd say. They've really fallen off, but I mean, especially narrowly winning 1-0, 1-0 versus Vodavina. Um, I don't know. It's kind of I don't know how I feel. I don't know if I'd rather prefer to play Ajax or them because they're like if they manage to beat Ajax, then that means, they're really giving it all versus Ajax, it could be a flip of a coin with them, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, without having watched the game, I think it says a lot about like are these two teams, Ajax and Vojvodina, actually that close? Is the difference between them a 1-0 game? Is that representative? Of course, I didn't watch it. I can't even get the stats because early Europa League qualifying, but You're right. This Ajax is not the Ajax of the 70s that obviously we have history with, or the
Or
90s,
even of the 2000s of
or even
recently,
of the
like,
2000s. Like
you know,
it was just as recently as like 5 years ago that they were in Champions League semifinals with the incredible team of, De Ligt and those guys.
of
Um,
course.
yeah, but last year they finished fifth. I believe it was fifth in the Netherlands, and that's why they're in Europa League qualifying and not higher. They did start out horrendous last year. I do remember
Yeah.
that. That kind of kept them back. They couldn't kind of overcome that really poor start. I don't know how well they finished, but yeah, I mean if you
They
start on
finished 9 points behind fourth, which was
that's
Alkmaar, and
that's
you
quite a
know,
gap, That's quite a gap. So
13 points to FC Twente, who would finish in third. They really dropped. They were closer to sixth, seventh, and eighth than they were to fourth and third. Let's put it that way.
yeah, so I mean that's pretty representative. And again, like you said, they're in Europa League qualifying and not Champions League for a reason. So listen, Ajax is Ajax. Like you got to respect them.
Of course.
We obviously have history with them. That goes without saying. And obviously they're on the favorable side of that history, and we're not. So it would be a fun matchup, obviously, because it's one that's rooted in history. But it is unfortunate because it
It's still not a great draw on paper. You look
it
at it
makes
like
makes our job
Ajax is
that much
Ajax.
harder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But nothing's set and done yet. Obviously, we have to get past the
We have
hurdle.
to secure it, and they do too.
They
Like,
do too.
so
They're only defending a 1-0 lead as we're only defending a 2-1 lead. So we're kind of in a very similar position. We both go away this week. And on Thursday, we'll know if we're playing Ajax, Vojvodina, or on worst case scenario, if we're dropping down to conference, which we also learned our two potential opponents there. Unfortunately, I don't remember them off the top of my head. They're not, they're nothing shocking. They're, kind of lower end opponents that you would expect from, the third qualifying round of conference and having dropped down from Europa. So there's that, but hopefully it is one of Ajax or Vojvodina that we're looking forward to play. Um, that's more or less what I got, Alki. I guess we didn't go much into what we expect from that next game on Thursday, but really for me, it's more of the same. I don't expect a much different lineup. I think Foti cannot feature in that game. I think the plan was to try to get him fit for that second leg, but I don't think he's included in the list, and you can't add players to the list.
right. I was gonna
Um,
say, even if he was, maybe give him a run of like 15 minutes near the end of the game, depending on what it's looking like, just see game fitness. But yeah, it's Yeremeyev and Sporard until further notice.
Right. So lineup wise, I think it's going to be more the same. Obviously, Tete cannot be included in that either. He's going to only be a factor in the next round. So the personnel is probably going to be more the same. If there's one change, maybe Maximovic comes in to the starting lineup in favor of Elena. That probably should have been the case in the first leg anyway. That was like the only surprise for me that I saw. Other than that, given the timing in the season, obviously the Slovenians are not really ready. The Serbians are coming back. Maximovic is one of them. Maybe that played into the decision to
I
not
think a
start.
lot of it too we see with the lineup is just more familiarity. I think Alonso is also somewhat playing it safe, playing the guys that have just always played with each other. Outside the center back pairing, which is obviously a little odd, but yeah, Maximovic, I don't know, he didn't seem too off step. I imagined or thought he would be, just kind of as a side note, much slower than what I saw him, but it looked like he had some pace to be able, maybe I'm just comparing that used to seeing Perez and he's just got no legs. So maybe that's what it is. But
Yeah.
I'm glad to see he got some game time, period. We'll
Yeah,
have to
no,
see what he is.
definitely good that he featured. Also good that Ingesson featured. His cameo was much shorter. He came on in the 89th minute. But those are the two positions that I'd look for maybe potential changes. Maximovic coming
Yep.
in midfield and potentially Ingesson coming in for Bart to pair with Jedvaj. Um, other than
Do you
that,
do you imagine Bart being not featured even though he's the captain?
I would not be surprised if Ingesson started with Jedvaj. Yeah, I would almost expect that. I said earlier that that's on paper, I think, our strongest center back pairing, Ingesson and
Right.
qualify. The only question is Ingesson ready? Obviously, he's come in very recently. So does the coach want to throw him in for, because if he starts, he's going to have to play 70 minutes probably. He's not going to start him, get subbed off at half, especially as a center back. So is the coach going to trust him for 70 minutes given that he's come in pretty recently and all that? It's a question. That's a question. I don't know. I really don't know. For that reason, if he doesn't, I could see Bart, keeping that spot for this game, but I would also not be surprised if Ingesson got the nod.
I guess that remains to be seen for Thursday.
Yeah, that's more or less it. I'm just looking forward to Thursday. I think it's at 2 again, 2 Eastern time, 9 Greece, I think. Um, Probably would have been good to have that.
Yeah, it's
It's
got to
at,
be because
it's at 2.
it's 11 my time, which is Pacific Standard. So
Yeah, it's at 2. So same time, Thursday, hopefully it's a good performance again. Hopefully we see a longer good performance this time, not just kind of restricted to the first half. And to be fair, we're talking about expectations and what we want to see. I want to see another win. Like I think that's not out of the question. Yes, it's away. Yes, did we get a narrow win the first time around? But I think there is a gap in quality between these two teams. I don't want to go too far with it
well,
and
we saw it in the first half. Like they didn't threaten at all. The only time they threatened and scored were off stupid mistakes on the counter when you're like 1-on-1 with the keeper. Like they weren't necessarily throughout the whole game getting by our guys beating us in any form or fashion for most of it. But yeah, there's definitely a gap. I expect the same. I'd actually, honestly, I'd prefer us to keep a clean sheet more than anything. I just want to see us just play a solid game with no mistakes and not concede a goal more than anything. I'd still like to see a score though, because Alonso's play style and it was a big thing last year's creating so many chances and not finishing
yeah.
is the biggest thing. But at the current moment, I just like us to not concede, honestly. If we get away with a 0-0, but with a good 0-0 where we looked good defensively and whatnot, I'd be more appreciative of that than beating them like 3-1, let's say, or 3-2 and conceding.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think like a lot of us wanted a clean sheet in this one too. Obviously that didn't
Yeah,
happen, but that was something that we wanted. So it would be nice to get that in the reverse leg. And the win itself is important because it's important for the coefficient, for the club's coefficient. Like that's
absolutely.
every win we get helps us obviously more than a draw. Like, yes, a draw would get us over the line to the next round in this case, but for the long run, you're trying to accumulate wins. You're trying to raise this coefficient as quickly as possible to get back to, higher pots and all this stuff in European competition. So getting this win would be important. And, by the way, the Greek teams on Thursday and Wednesday, PAO played on Wednesday. They went 3 for 3. PAO, Panathinaikos.
Not
So
great wins, but we still won.
not great wins. We were kind of everyone was ahead by a lot, and then only won by a little. But again, for the terms, not the terms, for the idea of the coefficient, a win's a win, and that's what you need as a club, and that's what Greece needs because now Greece is pushing above 15th place. So, if we could help out with that and
Get closer to
get the
10, that'd
wins
be
that are given to
amazing.
us and then take it. It helps everyone kind of. So yeah, I hope
Absolutely.
we win on Thursday. I hope we come out hitting. I hope we don't sit back and just kind of play for the draw. I don't expect that to happen, honestly. I really don't see
No.
it. Um, they didn't, like we've said many times, they didn't show anything to truly scare me or I think the team and the coach. So
Like they had pace on the wings, but it wasn't something we didn't handle well
yeah.
either, is my thing. So,
So anyway, that's long enough. We've gone on long enough. I think we've been here
yep.
for 2 hours. So the Australians will be back next time, hopefully previewing Panathinaikos versus Ajax/Vojvodina in the third Europa League qualifying round. Until then, that's it from us.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Cool.
listening. Have a great week,
Great.
everyone.
Great catching up, guys. And yeah, daleme.